Making poor decisions and sticking with them led me to personal bankruptcy. There was no other choice. I was excited to get laid off because I hated my job, but then it was like, uh-oh, no income. If you're everything to everyone, you're nothing to no one. Just because you and all your friends play golf doesn't mean you can make any money opening a driving range. It's not about who's going to get me the most money, but who do you want to serve? What market, what niche, what space do you want to serve?
What if the biggest barrier to your business growth isn't a market shift or a new competitor, but something far more internal? Imagine unlocking powerful new ways to not just grow your revenue and profit, but also to build incredible personal resilience that transforms every aspect of your entrepreneurial journey. Welcome to today's episode of Your Business Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Shapiro, and my guest today is Dom Casone. Dom's entrepreneurial journey is a masterclass in adapting, learning, and consistently breaking through plateaus. Like many of you, he's faced moments where simply working harder wasn't enough, where expenses climbed and growth seemed to stall. He even experienced the ultimate business challenge and bounced back stronger. But Dom discovered that true breakthroughs come not just from external strategies, but from a profound internal shift, allowing him to redefine his approach to business and life. What he learned propelled his company forward, enabled it to add entirely new lines of business, consistently increase revenue, and build predictable streams of income. Today, we're going to dive into Dom's incredible story, exploring the pivotal moments that forced him to change, the innovative strategies he employed to reignite growth, and the crucial mindset shifts that cemented his lasting success. Get ready to uncover how he found clarity, boosted productivity, and achieved a level of resilience that empowers him and those he mentors. Dom, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Jeremy. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so Dom, you're truly an entrepreneur at heart. You and I have known each other for so many decades through all these different turns in business, but can you share with our listeners, how did you get started in the world of entrepreneurship?
Well, I had a paper out at 13, and when it ended, I grew it so much that they had to break it into 3 separate paper routes. So I don't know, people don't get the paper delivered anymore, but back then they did. Anyway, so that's how I started. But my real official business was the Car Enterprises, which I formed in 1994. And I was a sole proprietor for a while. Then we started the business. And at the beginning, was very different. What my vision of it is very different from where it is today and how it evolved. And it's a much better, more stronger, more fulfilling for my clients and customers than it would have been had I been really static and said, it has to be like this.
So it sounds like it's evolved a bit, in your years of running the business.
I started when I got laid off, and I was excited to get laid off because I hated my job. But then it was like, uh-oh, no income.
So what did you do? You went from a layoff to just launch the business the next day? Tell us about that transition.
You know what? I'll be frank. Even though it's what I really, truly desired to get a layoff, I went into a slump for 2 or 3 months, and my wife kept saying, get the heck off the couch. So I built a trifold brochure, my first foray into marketing, and sent it to all my friends, family, past colleagues, past bosses, past whomever I could think of. Mailed it, with a little note, everyone I could think of. And that's how I got my first client.
Wow. So direct mail to the existing network you had, not as a business owner, not with a client base, but just sending out your first piece of real marketing for your business got you clients.
Correct. It did.
That's so cool. So beyond that initial win, what were some of the other earlier wins you had as you got the business off the ground and growing?
Well, what happened, a little bit serendipitous, because 1994, what was coming up was the millennium, 6 years from then. So people may not remember this, but there was this huge Y2K panic going on, right? Oh my God, all the computer systems are just going to all crash on January 1st. And of course, it didn't turn out that way. And most of these fear-based things have some value, but they're not nearly as bad as the reality is not nearly as bad as the hype has been. So anyway, I got lucky because one of my ex-bosses, 2 or 3 bosses before, and when I was working at Digital Equipment Corporation, was he said, oh, I could use this guy. So he was working for a consultant who hired me for a consultant. And we did payroll conversions, not my favorite thing, but we did payroll conversions all through the late 90s for some major corporations that that your listeners would know of, and got them onto payroll systems that were Y2K proof, if you will. So that got us really off the ground, and that made me enough revenue to keep things going, keep the business and the family and whatever else going.
Wow. It's funny. Sometimes, we talk about luck or serendipity, and this idea of like creating your own luck. But like, if you weren't out there, if you didn't have the business, even though these things were happening in the marketplace, you would have had no way to do anything with it. So is it serendipity, or is it the fact that you're just out there and had an opportunity then to be there?
I think it's both, because I did that marketing. I mailed those brochures. And because I did that, I was able to have a colleague of mine call me up and say, hey, you want to work on this? So I did get good work, but it had to do with my efforts. And I had some other clients before that, but this really got me off the ground.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure you see with some of your clients as well, business owners who want to dial in like the perfect product or the perfect idea and perfect it, never actually start the marketing side, not realizing the entire time that they're tinkering and not actively marketing, the business can't actually grow.
Nobody knows who you are, right? You're in your little office saying, phrase am I using? What's going to be my whatever saying, my slogan? What's my logo look like? What's my unique USP, unique selling property? Blah, 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 blah. Not unimportant stuff, but you got to actually get out there.
That's just it. And I love your example of, a trifold brochure, which I would imagine did not have the most amazing branding in the world, but it got out there, it got clients, you were in the market, they, people knew what you were doing, and you got to grow that. So well done. So one thing that you've talked about over the years, Dom, is this idea that, it's okay to branch out and try new things as us entrepreneurs do, but it's important also to stay dialed into what your core business is. Like, how did you figure that out over time, from getting out there with a trifold brochure to figuring out where your, decades old business is going to be focused?
Well, that comes from both looking outward and looking inward. Good way to put it, I think. So who do you want to serve? And serve is important. It's not about who's going to get me the most money, but who do you want to serve? What market, what niche, what space do you want to serve? And how can you help that space? What skills do you have? What skills can you gain to help that space? And so we decided after, we never wanted to work for big corporations. We did that to get off the ground. We did that. It was an important service to offer, but we wanted to work with small businesses. In fact, very small businesses.
Dom, when you say small, what size is small for you?
So, because the SMB definition is huge, right? I mean, they're like $500 million companies are SMB, small, medium businesses. No, I want solopreneurs to like 10, 20 employees. That's who I want to work with. Often it's service businesses, but not, that's not a requirement. But I want to work with the littler guys because I can work with the owner directly. I don't have to work with, some guy 3 levels down in some hierarchy. Because that's where I can do the most good, is influencing the owner and his mindset and what he needs to help grow his business. And so that's why I like working at that level.
Nice. Yeah, that's good. And it's important to know, and one thing I'm hearing for our listeners from you, Dom, is that when you know who your ideal customer is, right, you can stop saying yes to anyone, right, and be more selective, which also makes it easier for other businesses to refer you business, for you to dial in your marketing, your approach, your methodology, and all that. So really nicely done on figuring that out.
It's great to be able to help people who come to your doorstep. But as I think it was Bill Glazer taught me, if you're everything to everyone, you're nothing to no one. So you must say, oh yeah, I just do all this really cool stuff. But for whom is the important thing, right? So yeah, I do marketing. I do marketing automation. I do this, I do that. But to whom is important, because they're going to hire some guy who knows their business either by a vertical or a horizontal, it doesn't matter, but it knows their business, as opposed to some guy off the street that says, oh yeah, I can build you a website. Oh yeah, I can do your marketing. I can do your social media. It doesn't matter what it is.
And all those things you just mentioned are so vastly different from a Fortune 500 versus a solopreneur versus a small business and everything in between. So, yeah. So, over the course of your business, I think there's something unique that happens the longer you're in the world of business. And that is that it's not about hitting a plateau that defines your career or your arc or your trajectory, but it's this idea that plateaus will happen, right? And the longer you're in this, the more often they might happen. So you've hit a number of these growth plateaus, over the years. What was it like for you? Maybe the first time you hit one of these plateaus, or, as you hit your second, third, what was, take us back to that time.
When you hit plateaus, you have to, as I think you've said, you just can't work harder. It just doesn't always work. You can work harder, but that may not do it. So we've tried all different kinds of things over the years. We've gone back to work. My wife is a nurse. She was in the business with me. She is in the business with me, but she went back to nursing 2, 3, 4 times because we needed revenue. I even sold motorcycles for 2 years because I didn't have enough revenue. So we had to keep going. But what we did is we pivoted. I was really the car enterprise, when it was founded, was a technology company, an IT services company, if you will. But it's not really what we wanted to do. Plus, it led to plateaus more frequently. So what we did was we pivoted to a more technical marketing focus. And we got the education we needed. We learned about marketing from Dan Kennedy or Bill Glazer and others. Marketing automation tools. We started with Infusionsoft, now called Keep. We became certified partners with those organizations. So we dove in. We didn't just pay our dues. We just dove in and learned and contributed both internally to those organizations and in turn externally to our clients. And so by having a broader skill set to service the same market, we were able to get over a number of plateaus.
As you face those plateaus, clearly revenue was a driver in looking for change, right? Did you just shift to look for where there be new gross revenue opportunities, or were you looking for where is there more profitability? Did that differentiation ever matter to you guys?
Yes. We always prioritize profitability over gross revenue because gross revenue is a phony number. Not phony number. It's an important number. But if you're just doing gross revenue and your expenses keep climbing, you're getting nowhere, right? I mean, hey, I made 500 million. I made a billion. I made whatever. But my expenses are now 600 billion and 600 million, 1.2 billion. You're nowhere. So profitability is the most important to me when you're in this situation. So we did stuff we lowered our costs. If we had to, we took things back that we had outsourced. We used more things to generate more profit, not just revenue.
Got it. So what I'm hearing is that in looking at profitability, you looked at both not just the top end of gross revenue, but how much profit there was in what you were selling, but also on the expense side of what can we do to reduce expenses or dial those in as well.
Often the easiest way to get more profitable is to reduce expenses. All of us, personally or business-wise, if we went and looked at what we're spending money on, there's 10, 20, maybe more percent that you could live without and not notice it.
Or you're paying for and not even using. I mean, I see that so common in businesses when you look through expenses. There's things they're paying for that can be consolidated or that just aren't even used. So it's a good exercise to do with your accountant, your bookkeeper, your CFO, whoever, to identify what are the expenses, who are we paying the most to, and how can we reduce or eliminate some of those. So when you look at strategies, as you've hit plateaus, you've applied different strategies that fit within the formula I talk about, right? So when you're facing a plateau and you wanted to branch out, you've launched new products and product lines and services. How did you figure out what to pursue first in a world of opportunity and ideas? How do you choose?
We all want to do fun stuff, but you have to look and see who cares. My very first business tape back in the cassette tape era was that stuck with me since before I started any companies was just because you and all your friends play golf doesn't mean you can make any money opening a driving range. Because, your world this was his analogy. Yeah, everybody I know plays golf and they all got to practice their drives, but that's everybody that's not everybody. So you have to be careful. That's not a good answer for building and opening a driving range, because you might be the only 20 guys in the area that play golf. Who knows, right? So that was stuck with me from before I even started started the company was, does anybody really care? Well, that's a great idea, but you have to figure out if they care, if there's a market for it, if there's a need for it.
So how did you identify that? What did you do to make sure that the idea you had a market who resonated with your messaging?
Oftentimes I found that there was a hole, there was a need. I could see the need and then filled it. I think the best example in my history is that one of the things we started years ago and Carrie went to school for was website design for marketing websites to help our client companies get exposure into the web. And we're talking, the web was a lot different than it is today, although websites are still phenomenally important. And then, of course, we got into CRMs, or customer relationship management software, and we focused on Infusionsoft, now Keep. We said, a lot of our clients could either have a need for or could use to increase their business a membership site. More people than not could use one, but they don't think of it. But then we used Infusionsoft or Keep, and we realized there was no way for the two of them to communicate together. So how do I know that my member, Jeremy, A, he has to pay his monthly or yearly dues, and B, what is he doing and what's important to him inside the membership site? So all of that can be saved in Jeremy's contact record, or customer relationship management, or in Infusionsoft. So we built that bridge. So now we can watch exactly what the guy does and know what he has access to. So Jeremy's a silver member, but Jeremy says, I really want to access the XYZ. So, well, you need a gold membership for that. Upgrade him to gold, and then we can then know that now he's a gold member, and we know to charge him more each month because he's at the gold level. All of that stuff because of the communications of a product that we built. So there was a need, and we built it.
Nice. Now, I want to talk on the membership site piece a bit more, because not only have you used continuity in your business, but you've helped a lot of your clients implement continuity, recurring revenue strategies as well through membership sites. Especially these multi-tiered, you're talking like silver, gold, and all that. Can you tell me more about how that changed revenue for you or your clients just by taking an existing business and adding a continuity component on?
Sure. I mean, here's the deal with continuity. If you figure out how to do it, certain percentage, like with everything else, we talked about this in a different context, don't use it, but they pay for it. Okay. So once you build a continuity program, first off, your overhead goes way down because they have access to what they need. They don't need you. They pay their monthly fee and they log in and they get it. The other piece is there's a lot of people, if you pay their membership but never log in, therefore never have a problem, therefore never ask you a question, but you get the revenue. So I'm not saying that's your desired outcome. Obviously, it's not. You want people to utilize what you're giving them. Dan Kennedy famously said when he used to sell big binders from the stage, I really want you to take the cellophane off the binder and do the course. But I also want to sell you the course. I mean, I'm doing the course to get you to learn the material, but if you just buy the course, I'm okay. That's all, So same thing with membership sites. You want your members to take an active role, but you'll get continuity revenue from people who are not taking an active role, and you couldn't get them to pay you money otherwise. And it also makes your business a lot simpler. The continuity gets paid every month, year, however you structure it, and you give them value for that money with automation. So everybody wins.
Over the years, I've had many business models myself and worked with a tremendous number of clients with different business models. And you slowly figure out sort of who you are and what you like in a business, right? And the continuity component has always been, ever since I figured it out, so important as like a must-have in a business model. Wherever you are in the world, whatever you're doing, whether you make a new sale today or not, you still know there's revenue coming in every single day, regardless. And that is such a beautiful thing that puts you in a different mindset in terms of how you approach your day, because you're not thinking about getting the new sale as a must, right? It becomes an optional thing. And really then it comes down to managing churn and looking for growth, instead of just going out and hunting every single day.
Correct. Absolutely true. I mean, it's just relatively easy to build in, a lot of work, a little work at the front end, a fair amount of work at the front end, but then it sort of sails on its own all the way through. And like you said, you wake up in the morning and there's more money in your checking account and you haven't done anything.
It's a good way to start the day.
And of course you have done things, but you haven't done anything directly to get that revenue. You built it all into a system for them to use, your clients and customers to use.
It's a phenomenal strategy. It's one of my first go-tos when working with someone. So I love that you do that, obviously for yourself, but also clients as well. So on that note, another strategy I know we've talked about is this idea of upsells as well as revisiting pricing from time to time. Talk to me a little bit more about how you work with adding upsells in and testing your pricing out.
Okay, so I mean that we could do another whole multi-hour thing on upsells, right? I mean, and membership levels. I mean, that whole thing could take hours. There's an hours we could discuss that, you and I. But first question thing is always have an upsell. Always have an upsell. Somebody says, I want to sign up back to membership, my silver level. You sure you don't want to go to gold? It's only another $20 a month. You can get gold and you get all these benefits by going gold. So always have an upsell. Look, I don't remember the exact statistics, but something like 20% of the people will always take the upsell just because it's there. Just because it's there, right? Oh yeah, I got to be gold because I'm super cool, or whatever their right reasons are. They'll take it. So why not have it? It's free money. So that's for number one, upsell. Pricing. Never really be scared to raise your prices. Okay. I mean, look, I don't know what ecosystem you're in. I'm in the Apple ecosystem. I know Apple's charging me far more than I could get the same products for, but when I have a problem, Apple will turn heaven and earth to fix it. Their people are good. Their customer service is great. I'm willing to pay it. And there are people who are willing to pay if you provide the service and support and products that they need. They'll pay the money. So you can't walk out, start a new business and build a new set of headphones and charge what Apple charges. But if you have the infrastructure, you can charge more than Apple charges. So that's the thing. Don't be afraid to raise your prices. I raise them all the time. Not that long ago, maybe less than a year, I have a small, I do website hosting as a small part of my business. I just raised prices on everybody. I said, starting next month or next billing period, prices going from here to here. Not a word from any of them, not even a hiccup. They just, oh, okay.
What was your takeaway from getting no pushback on the price change?
If you're giving, here's my takeaway is back kind of what we've talked about. If you're giving good service and good value and they appreciate what you're doing, they're happy to pay it. And also the pain of disconnect is high or not. It makes it difficult for them to want to leave you. So they're happy to pay it for what you're giving them.
It's the sticky factor.
Yeah, it's a sticky factor. So momentum is a great thing and a bad thing, but it can be a great thing. And if you provide a set of services that are hard to replicate, now the pain of disconnect sounds like a bad thing, but it's not. I mean, everybody wins by keeping your clients there because they're there for a reason. And that reason may be because it would be hard for me to replicate this somewhere else. It would be painful for me to leave.
Yeah, that's good. It's funny. I think back to one of my earlier continuity businesses. I think back, closer to when we met. And, at the time, I think one of our levels of service was like $19 a month, right? And there was the question of, do we raise that to 29? And you can think about it and analyze it and all that all you like. But at the end of the day, we're like, well, look, we can test this on just the new customers coming in, right? We don't have to, upset the apple cart with existing customers. Let's just see what it does to conversions, right? And wouldn't you know, we saw no difference on front-end conversions. And suddenly our profit margins went up dramatically with a higher price point, right? And so then we're able to roll it out to existing customers and so on. But even if you test out a price increase, you can try it on just your new inbound to see if it impacts the conversion rate.
Yes, and we've done that in the past too. Okay, so So Jeremy, you came in, a long time ago and you're $19 a month, but Fred wants to join and he goes to the website to fill out the form and it's 29. He knows and he doesn't know any different.
Dom, you've gone where many business owners fear going in their business, and that's working with lists and cold prospecting, right? We all, of course, would love to get referrals all day long. And the idea of reaching out cold to someone who has never heard of us, for some business owners is exciting, but for most is terrifying. So tell us more about how you've used cold prospecting over the years and how that's helped you.
Well, early on, I got any names of businesses that I thought could use me. I pick up the phone and call them. Did I like it? No, I hate cold calling. Most people hate cold calling, but unless, there are people who love it, but most hate it. But I did it because I had to. But also what I did is I learned who to call. Okay, that's important because first off, your time is valuable. So you just can't get a list. Oh, here's everybody in this zip code and start calling them. That's silly and non-productive. But what you can do is get that list narrowed down. And that's what I did. Okay. I got lists, people who use either the same products we offer or use competitors' products and went to talk with them. We got very narrow lists. And so then cold calling, the conversation is very different because you already have a base to work from using the CR. You already using the CRM. So let's talk Infusionsoft, or you already have a website. Let's talk of redoing it to make it more of a marketing website as opposed to get more business, as opposed to back to the trifold brochure. My website's really the client's website's really a trifold brochure. Well, what good does that do? I have a website, but where is that getting you? So anyway, not to get off the subject, that's what I did. I found narrow lists and used my contacts within my world, within my vendor's world, and they helped get me clients to go and reach out to.
Nice. So it sounds like you knew who your ideal client was. You dialed that down, and then based on what you knew about them, you knew what in your product portfolio you could offer them.
Correct. Okay. And once we get them, we try real hard not to lose them.
So how did you get over, that discomfort or that fear of calling the unknown? Was the first call the worst and then by the 10th you're fine? Or was this every time you dreaded it? Walk us through, how you got over that hump.
So the phone receiver weighs approximately 2,000 pounds. Okay. And, it's like, oh, I can't even pick it up, let alone dial it. So that's truly how I felt. And it's truly how many people feel about cold calling. The point is, what's your why? Why are you doing this? How determined are you? How important is it for you to get your message out to the world of how you can be of service to them? Yeah, you got to eat. And yeah, you might lose your house if you don't do these things, but the mindset is better if it's driven not by money or getting lunch tomorrow, but more driven about how what I do is needed by people and I can serve them. Then the phone gets lighter.
That's beautiful. I like how you're touching on the why piece of it and how that can drive. So that kind of leads me then another area of questions I wanted to ask you about, and that's really getting into more the mental resilience side of things. So you've incorporated positive intelligence principles and its whole operating system and all into your business. And that's been a big mental shift for you. Talk to us more about what positive intelligence is. How'd you go about integrating that into the business and life and the clients you work with?
Okay, so there are really two ways that it gets incorporated. One is in everyday languaging. So once I understand and learned, and of course we're still learning, it's a lifelong venture, but what the positive intelligence operating system is, we start incorporating that in the way you interact with people. And so that's probably the most often way thing is that to talk to people differently. I just think about how do I want to address this person? And now I think about how to do that differently. So,
for example,
okay, so there are two ways you can come at a problem. You can come at it from a negative side or a positive side. In the parlance of positive intelligence, either can be driven by your saboteurs or driven by your sage. Saboteurs are bad. They're like, they're judging, or they're this or they're that. I got to call this Jeremy dude, but he's such a pain in the ass, and so that's my judge saboteur telling me I do have to call you, but I really don't want to. And then that comes through. I mean, there's this nonverbal communication is stronger than verbal communication. You would know that at some level, either conscious or subconscious, that Dom is coming to you from a negative point of view. Other side is sage. Okay, I have empathy for Jeremy. I want to explore with him how we can mutually benefit things. We can innovate together. Those are all what we call sage principles. Okay, so that's how you do it. I want to help Jeremy, and if he's a pain in the ass, frankly, excuse me, but there's a reason for it, and it's not because he's just a jerk. It's because something causes him to behave that way. So I can either reflect that back at him, or I can come at him that way, or I could say, you know what, Jeremy, like the rest of us, is a human that has failings and has hard parts and easier parts. So I can look at the easier parts and focus on them. I can work at and that's different. I don't know, it's a long explanation. I hope it made some amount of sense.
What I'm hearing you say there, Dom, is it's a matter of perspective, looking at the same thing or the same person, the same problem, and seeing the saboteur side versus the sage and choosing which one to follow.
Be conscious that you can make that choice. Okay, you can be conscious to say, well, I have to talk to this guy, not my favorite guy, but we can work together and get things done. Or not think about it and grab the phone and know that you're going to have this underlying negative current coming through.
Yeah. There's a fun game I like to play with our kids. If we're out somewhere and we see someone doing something that just seems like a bad idea or dangerous or dumb or any of these things, right? Where that's the first gut reaction. The game is we're like, all right, well, what would make that okay? What could be going on that we don't know about where we would now approve of that decision or think it's a good idea? And it's a really fun game. And then at some point, like, wow, okay, I could see why maybe they're doing that. It's unlikely, but now we know there's possibilities that exist beyond sort of the gut reaction.
Right. And maybe they had lots of training. Like you see this guy doing this crazy things on a skateboard. Well, maybe he's been doing skateboarding stuff for 10 years. It's not as dangerous for him as it would be for you or me.
Right. You see someone, driving fast and passing you aggressively on the highway, and, it could be road rage could kick in, or there's the acknowledgement of, you don't know what's going on. They could be rushing to the hospital. Right. And then you would totally understand.
Right. And my now answer is, in general, some people just need to be first, and I'm okay with that. I don't need to be first. So, okay, you want to pass me? Fine. And there's no sense of getting aggravated about it. It doesn't help anything. It hurts you, doesn't help him, or hurt him for that matter.
With age, look at the wisdom we have with age.
Yeah, right. There you go. So let me finish answering the question. And one more point. The other way I help with clients is I actually do positive intelligence coaching, or PQ coaching, directly with people. So there's the way I approach things, and then there's actually doing, and that way I approach things helps our relationship. But actually, there's also people, business owners, who go through the PQ coaching program.
Nice. So adding on this whole PQ angle to your business was a new direction you went. And over the years, you've done this a number of times, adding on new products, going after new markets, and so on. Tell me more about that. Like, what was learned each time you made one of these shifts and, decided to add new products, services, offerings, and so on?
They didn't always turn out well. And so one of the things that we did was to kind of do a postmortem on them when we closed them, or either before or after, or right after we closed them down. Why did this not work? And there's always reasons. So that's one of the things that we did. One of the other things that we always didn't do was to really, as I've talked about earlier, is not really look for the need, or not really look for, the other side is not really look for, do I have the skill sets to do this? Or do I want to acquire the skill sets to do this? So you need to keep your business, you can't do the same thing as time marches on forever and ever. So you do need to either add services, take some away, change your focus a little, but you have to do it as best you can intelligently. There's factors you can't figure in, but you have to at least try.
As you've done these experiments and done the postmortems, did you find at any point like it was your funnels that had leaks, or there was some glaring problem you weren't aware of while you were stuck in the business that you only saw with a postmortem perspective of looking at the business?
Yes. I mean, we know that we went in certain directions we should have never gone in, some of which cost us a lot of money and time and effort where that could be better put somewhere else. Some of the postmortems were, you know what, I got bored. Let's try. Oh, look, this looks really cool. Let's try that. Well, except did you do your due diligence ahead of time? Probably not, because it didn't work out. Now, it doesn't mean it's not wasn't a valid venture. It wasn't a valid venture for us. That's important. Just because somebody can make money at whatever doesn't mean you can't.
I was just talking to someone this morning about this idea of, it's not sometimes there are bad products, but other times there's a perfectly good product that is just being marketed in the wrong way or to the wrong market, right? And that's why we talk about product market fit. So that same product, a different market, it could be amazing, right? Or if that's the market you want to work with, a different product can, be amazing. So that's good. That's insightful. All right. So implementation, right? Ideas are great. You've got a million ideas. Your clients have a million ideas. Our listeners have a million ideas. But implementation, as we all know, is what makes the difference. Execution on the ideas, right? So talk to me about implementing the changes you made in your business. Any gotchas, problems, fires you saw as you tried to implement some of these new ideas you had?
So yeah, lots. Some of the new ideas required an immensely steep learning curve. So you had to decide, or maybe should have decided earlier, that do I want to invest in that learning curve? How much do you want to put limits around it? How much time, how much money, how much effort, for how long do you want to put at this for, before I call it quits? And, calling it quits is a hard thing because you have this thing because you're invested in it and it's ego driven. You have to try to get the ego out of it because it can be ego driven. I should be able to do this. I'm a smart guy. I'm a business owner. I'm supporting my whole family with my business. I should be able to do this one too. Well, maybe not. So let's try to get the emotion out of it and say, this is not working for me for whatever reason. Doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's not bad for me.
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's so natural for us entrepreneurs to start things, right? And to implement, right? And to not quit, right? To have perseverance and grit and all this. And yet so often an important action that we never want to take is figuring out what to stop doing, right? We stick with it all. We never get rid of a product line. We never get rid of a customer. We never get rid of a mindset. We keep all of it. And at some point that can become too much to manage. So culling and pruning is important.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I can tell you from painful experience that making poor decisions and sticking with them led me, and now at this point in time, I am not ashamed to share it, led me to personal bankruptcy. There was no other choice because I went all in, invested too much money, spent too much time, had too much credit card debt. I can go, all the standard things. And the whole thing was a mistake. So then I got out of it, but by then it was kind of late. So you just have to put some limits around what you're doing. You need to change your business model. You need to even try something new. I mean, this whole PQ thing is new, relatively speaking.
Take us back in time. What were some of the takeaways you had from facing the bankruptcy, going through that process, coming out the other side of it? Like, take us back to that.
This was an adventure that we had worked with another partner that we turns out after a period of time realized he wasn't on the same wavelength as I was, shall we say. And oh yeah, we'll just pour this money in here and then this will turn around, and pour that money in here and that will turn around. And I was saying, okay, you know more about this than me. And I did, and I shouldn't have. And by the time I realized I shouldn't have, I was in over my head. So, we went through the process, the whole, went through the attorney and all the paperwork and the court dates and the this and the that, came out with a plan. We executed the plan absolutely flawlessly that we were given to by the court. And then 5 years after that, we're out. But of course, everything's trashed, right? You have a credit rating of 3, something like, right? Because most of that debt got canceled because of the bankruptcy, or a lot of it did, not all of it, but a portion of all of that debt got canceled, and people aren't happy about that. And rightfully so. I mean, that was one of the hardest things for us to deal with, being, we feel responsible people, to know that some people were not going to get the money they were owed. But anyway, then we just built back up. We just did. We built our credit. We started with, prepaid credit cards, and got real credit cards and paid them all off. And then everything started, our credit rating is, not 830 or whatever the highest number is, but it's pretty high, but now it's probably in the 790s, 780s, something like that. I don't know the numbers that well, but in any event, because we worked the same system that you would work to solve any other problem. Understand the problem, understand the issues, deal with them, just work it until it's gone.
Well, and that comes back to this topic we keep touching on, which is implementation, right? The plan's wonderful, but if you didn't follow it, that would have put you in an even worse position, right? The ideas are great. If you don't implement them, it doesn't do you any good. So, as you've implemented these changes over the years, with each new product launch, with each new, service offering, price increase, and so on, what was that like? What kind of results did you see to revenues, profits, and so on? Like, how did that impact your business?
Okay, so obviously, different things offer different percentage changes. One of the things that we found that made a big difference is bundling and continuity. Even for one-off clients, we found a way. Took us a while, but we figured out a way, and not every client does it. But if they hire us for a fixed project that lasts, 3 months, 6 months, doesn't matter, for X dollars. Okay, great. I got the X dollars. I do the job. They're happy. I'm happy. But now what? They go away. Now I got to find another guy to replace him. So one of the big things that made a difference was say, hey, Jeremy, we did this project for you. It's going to need more upkeep. We're going to want to keep changing things. We're going to want to work on stuff. There's really more we could do. How about we go on a monthly fee to, this is back to this continuity thing we've talked about several times, and we'll do this, and that for you each month for X dollars. And they go, okay. We got clients we've had for a year. 10 years anyway, that pay us the X dollars per month, and we do what we promise. And, so now it's back to that same continuity thing. I don't have to worry about getting no money tomorrow because the job ended. So that was a big change to how we, managed all of this kind of revenue, sort of smooth, not up, down, but kind of smooth. Yeah, exactly.
So one question I always love asking folks who have continuity in their business, especially if it's a big part of their business, is how they work with churn, right? Churn meaning how many customers we're losing in a given time period versus what we started with. What are some of the things that you do to keep churn low or monitor churn and so forth in your business?
So here's the most important thing is you got to do what you say you're going to do for the money you say you're going to do it for. That's a big thing. Okay. And you work really hard to make yourself indispensable. And so if you are doing what you say you're doing, you provide exceptional service, you're responsive, and responsive doesn't mean answer the phone every time it rings. You have to, because then, so if I'm working with you, Jeremy, we're doing this podcast together, and my phone rang and I grabbed it, that's disrespectful to you and your audience. So it doesn't mean you jump, but it means you're responsive. There's two different things. And you provide a set of services that are hard to replicate. Okay. For our web clients, they don't want to learn how to deal with their website. And I don't blame them. That's not their business, right? They're in, we do a number of kitchen and bath remodeling businesses is one of their sub niches that seems to be working for us. They don't, what the heck do they know about how do I take this from green to blue? So they pay us to do it. The other thing is, as I mentioned about my web hosting business, We offer a set of services. We're not cheapest, but we offer a set of unique services. So if you leave, you have to find somebody else who does those services for you.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing there, Dom, is a few things. One is clearly you've differentiated from the marketplace. You're not just a commodity, web host, right? Or agency. Two is the commitment to responsiveness, as well as three, following through on your promises, doing what you say you'll get done. And all those all of that, I think, comes down to providing high value. So you may have a high price, but the value is even higher.
Correct. The value has to be high. The value, in my mind, if I'm serving my client, I have to feel I'm providing more value than they're paying me. Okay. Another thing I didn't want to touch on is be innovative. Don't be just, I'm going to do these 5 things. You see something, you say, look, Mr. Client, I see that, this is an area that you have in your parlance, you said earlier, leaky bucket here. You have a leak in your bucket. Okay. So, because I'm innovative, I'm looking and I'm not just doing the 5 things I say I'm going to do. I got my eyes open. And then, that's added value for no cost, but it's important.
No, that's huge. It's funny, when I had early beta feedback on the book, some of the feedback I got from folks as I talked about the tactics in the book is that they were read the wrong way. They were read as taking advantage, right? For example, like raising a price, right? Could be seen as, taking advantage of a customer. And I realized that I hadn't framed some of these tactics and strategies correctly with the big, huge asterisk of you must always be providing a high value. So long as that value grossly, outweighs the price, everyone's happy, right? So if you're not providing value in your commodity business and you're in a red ocean, then raising a price or decreasing your value is going to be disastrous, right? So make sure you are niched. Make sure it's a blue ocean. There's not much competition. Make sure you're over delivering on value and all the things you're talking about, and you have very happy customers.
It's a big mistake. I've seen it a lot of times where customers start to get desperate. They for their service or product, whatever they're offering, they start to get desperate, and then they start raising prices, and all that does is hasten their demise.
Yeah.
Right? They don't do anything for it. They just say, "Oh my God, I'm losing money. I got to charge another $50 for this." Yeah. But why? I mean, we all know there's inflation, there's costs, there's material, all that stuff comes into play, and those increase, and you have to keep your profit margins up. But because you're scared,
and if clients don't already see you as, a huge value, that can make the difference to them deciding to then churn. So good. Thank you.
And let me add this other thing. You don't keep clients forever. You work for as long as you can. You try as hard as you can, but their life changes, their business changes. You're not the right person for them anymore, the right company for them. That's okay. But let me tell you, with this PQ coaching, I have reached out to quite a number of ex-clients, and they said, "Oh, Dom, it's great to hear from you." That may be 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Oh yeah, we did some really great stuff together. Thanks for reaching out, yada, yada. Doesn't mean whether they necessarily I got business out of it, but it's the knowing that I gave them what they wanted in large part beyond what they asked for, that they were so excited to hear from me after 10 years.
No, it's huge. One thing that, if someone told you about ahead of time that you may not believe until you've experienced it yourself is the value of the network and the people you get to know, not just clients, but, other people at conferences, people in your industry, the quote competitors, all this stuff. Like at the end of the day, we're all people, right? And generally we're all good people looking to help each other out and stay connected. So build that network. In your case, from clients and so on, it's lifelong relationships.
Correct. And they are lifelong. You would be absolutely, I'm sure you've experienced it. Oh, and somebody you totally forgot about pops back into your personal, professional, whatever.
So Dom, before we wrap, I want to, just touch on lessons learned and advice for, fellow business owners. Looking back at your journey of getting unstuck and, for our listeners who are feeling stuck in their business and want that breakthrough, like what's something you do differently or what's a piece of advice you might share with someone in the same position that, you've been in each time you've, gotten stuck and had to break through?
Okay. So I'm glad you asked because I actually wrote notes about that because there are important points I wanted to get across. in that exact thing, because it's important, because we're all going to go through that stuck spot if you want to stay in business. And then, by the way, this being stuck happens in your personal life too, so you need to watch out for that. So when you think you're stuck or things are not going the way you smoothly, your first thing is take a step back. Okay, you need to step back and look at what you're doing, what's going on around you, what's going on in your personal life and in your business life, and what's going on in the world outside you. Everybody says, oh, this is a horrible climate because of this reason or this political thing or that, climate change or whatever. You just got to figure out a way. That's to take a step back. Okay, you don't particularly like this president? Well, he's there for 4 years. Or you love this president, but he's going to be gone in 4 years. It doesn't matter. Or any other thing, political or non. You got to just take a look back, step back, and then look at what you can do better, and take another look and a deep thought of what your niche needs. What does your niche need that you could provide them based on what you know? So basically, put this back in the parlance of positive intelligence. 3 of the 5 sage powers are explore, innovate, and activate. That's what I'm saying. You take a step back and you explore. What could I do? What have I done? What could I do better? What could I do differently? Then you innovate on how to do that. And then we'll take laser focus action on doing it. So that's the number one thing. The second thing I would recommend, because I experienced it negatively, do not take a hard 90-degree turn that seems good and leave your core business behind. Okay, you want to get out of your core business, great, but you know what's paying the bills? You have clients that depend on you. You have to keep going. You have too much invested in it if you've been in business for more than 10 minutes, right? So don't just say, I'm not doing any of this marketing stuff anymore. I want to go and teach sailing lessons for my career. I don't know. I made it up. Okay, that's great if you want to teach people how to sail, but you just can't shut down and go buy a sailboat.
Nice. It's super helpful. I think, especially as entrepreneurs, we so often see all these opportunities and want to jump at all of them. Just because we feel that urge to chase an idea doesn't mean we have to follow it. Sometimes those are brilliant business ideas, but we can't keep getting distracted by everything. So beautiful. But Dom, I also like how you touched on that concept you shared earlier, the postmortem, of looking at after the fact of what went right, what went wrong, and what we can learn from it. Super. All right. So to recap for our listeners, what I'm hearing is you've shown how consistently pushing beyond plateaus, right, often through significant mindset shifts and strategic adjustments across all 3 of those variables we talk about in the book, F, A, and Q, that let your business not just survive, but truly thrive and grow with consistent revenue. And that branching out and trying out a strategy is really what can make a difference, not thinking about it, but actually implementing it and then looking back at the results of how that experiment went. And that touches on those 3 stages you mentioned of the explore, innovate, and activate. And so this whole plateau thing isn't something we face once and done, but something we face again and again in business.
There's too many variables in the whole world, in the universe, let alone just our town or our city or our state, in the universe, that you can't control. And you have to just be kind of light on your feet, but in a smart way.
Dom, this has been really fun. For our listeners who want to learn more about you, where should they go right now?
Okay, so the best place to go is probably on my website, which is zacaw.com, ZACAW.com. And if you want to learn more about coaching, you just do /coach.
Awesome. And we'll have all those links and everything in the show notes as well.
Okay. And then you want to find out more, I got a lot of articles that I've written about the coaching program and my LinkedIn.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, a lot of our audience hangs out over on LinkedIn. That's pretty much the only place you'll find me these days. So we'll look forward to seeing you guys over there. And Dom, this was super fun. Thank you for joining me and sharing so much about your journey.
I am excited that we could get together and do this.